The purpose of this video is not to make excuses for my mistakes. The purpose of this video is really to just kind of address those mistakes specifically, because I've made several of them since I've been running this channel, and mistakes are easy to make. I used to be a science teacher before I was a principal, and I had a saying that I would always say to everybody that was in my class, that if a human does it, there's going to be errors. So that's really what this video is about. Now I want to start, before I give you my top 5 list of the mistakes I've made on this channel, before I give you that, what I'd like to share is just kind of a story of what this weekend looks like, to give you an idea, again, not because I'm trying to make an excuse. I always tell people something that you're either going to love or hate about me, is I always have a story about everything. And before I give you my top 5, my story is about this weekend. Starting on Friday, I always publish videos on Tuesdays and Fridays, and I had no videos published at all. I had no videos filmed, and it was Friday. Well, Friday morning I woke up early and I had to get into work early because it was Grandparents' Day, one of the biggest days of the year. And as I go into work and I'm dealing with Grandparents' Day, I mean, it was wonderful. Always celebrate your grandparents. What an awesome thing that was. But it makes for a busy day. And we had breakfast, we had prayer, we had praise music, we had all sorts of things going on at our school. And then when finally things started to settle down, because we invited the grandparents to go to classes, I told my assistant, hey, I got to run into town real quick. And I took off. I ran to a pond where I filmed this video that I'm going to put the link here. It's my top 10 new 9mm handguns for 2017. And then I threw my camera back in the car. I raced off to work. I then served lunch to grandparents and hundreds of people, and just talked to people and shook hands and prayed with people. And then when I had a little downtime, I found a quiet spot, and I then proceeded to edit the video. And then when school finally got out, I had to drive from where I lived to Cape Girardeau, Missouri, because I'm doing a new recording of the music for this channel. And I get down to Cape Girardeau, but on the way I had to stop at a coffee shop. I had to upload it to YouTube, and then on my drive I clicked publish. So that's generally how I make a lot of my videos. I do a lot of the research beforehand, but I obviously am going to make mistakes when you're that busy, and that's the only reason I shared that story. So here's my top 5 list of mistakes I've made. Number 1, the Sig Sauer 938. Now, I did a video that was called Don't Bet Your Life on This Gun, and it was one of my very first videos I ever made. It actually kind of intrigued me into making gun reviews because I hated that pistol. It malfunctioned like crazy. It was the worst pistol I've ever owned. And I did a review on it, and it was very negative in nature. But as I did that review, what I did, because, and again, I'm not making excuses, I'm just telling you what that day was like. I was teaching chemistry, and we're going over gas laws, and I'm literally doing calculation after calculation for 7 different classes. And then I race home, and I set up a camera in front of the fireplace, and I'll put the link to that video here, and I make this video. And the whole time I'm dissing on this gun, I'm calling it the 928. Now, when I published that video, immediately it had more views than all my other videos, and because it was early on, I mean, when I had a lot, it had like 300. It was big in those days. So this video then was embarrassing, because not only was I insulting a gun that a lot of people love, but I couldn't even call it the right name. And so there's my number 1 mistake I've made. Number 2 is worrying about negative comments. Early on, in some of the very first videos I started publishing, people immediately started saying negative things, because I just strongly believe it doesn't matter what you say. If you get out and you say anything in the world, there's going to be negative comments coming back. I always had a saying that I tell people, that you can get out on a stage in front of 500 people and on a microphone just say one simple thing: I like chocolate pie, and that is all. And there's going to be a handful of people that are going to be very offended. They're going to say, well, why not cherry, or why not apple? And they're going to start insulting you, and that's just what you get for being a public speaker. Because of that, I really was kind of hurt by these in the beginning, and early on my wife told me, she said, you know, if you're going to worry about this, you really can't do it, because you know that that's going to happen. And I really kind of grew out of that, but that's hard in its own manner too, because oftentimes, I'm just going to tell you that I wake up in the mornings and I'm always looking at what happened the night before on YouTube, and what are people saying, and what are the comments, and what are the messages that people are saying, and what are the prayer requests. And people say terrible things, and they also say terrible things about my family, and it's kind of awful to see, but I wish I can go back in time and not give it a minute of worry. Number 3. The top 10 greatest gun designers of all time. Now, I did a lot of research for that video, and I'm going to put the link here. In my opinion, it's one of the best videos I've ever made. I love that video. But in that video, what I do is I gave some wrong birth dates, and I had the right dates written down. I went back and I looked at, I do the research, I kind of write out a script, and I went back and I looked at the dates, but for some reason, I'm going to blame it on a hard day's work again. I just said the wrong dates. And for example, I said John Browning was born in 1940. I know he wasn't born in 1940. Obviously, it's hard to invent the 1911 if you're born in 1940. And it wasn't even 1840, it was 1855. But I still hollered those out. And those are great people, and I really feel bad about having that wrong. I've learned that once you publish a video, you kind of have a quick choice to make if you make an error, and I don't catch them soon enough. Sometimes I publish them and then I go off about my day. I think that night the Chiefs were the openers at Arrowhead, and I was watching that game. Meanwhile, I'm just trying to upload it again, not trying to make excuses. It's just I don't go back and I watch it right away. Sometimes I don't watch it ever again, and I don't know I made those mistakes until people tell me about it. And at some point, it's just kind of too late. You could just cancel out the video, which I've done that on many videos before as well, because again, these aren't the only 2 mistakes I made in what I called something, usually by numbers. If I'm going to mess up, it's usually by numbers. Number 4, in my top 5 most accurate 9mm ever made, I listed 2 different Glocks, and I really regret doing that, because I know that Glocks are, by most accounts, very similar weapons. They just have different numbers based on calibers and barrel lengths and grip frames and that sort of thing. And I did list 2 Glocks, and I believe to this day those are 2 of the most accurate handguns I've ever fired. I'm not a Glock fan necessarily. I've never owned a single Glock in my life. I've fired a bunch of them, but I've watched people on the ranges, and I've seen what these guns can do, and they're just darn accurate. I've never seen anything like it, with the exception of the other 3 videos I list, or the other 3 guns that I listed, and I'll put a link for that here. But I do regret listing 2 Glocks as my on my top 5. I wish I just would have done 1. I still believe they're both very accurate, but I wish I would have just done 1. And finally, number 5. We take prayer requests here on this channel, and a lot of people send in prayer requests, and it has truly been a blessing to us. But people have asked us for prayer, and I regret that I haven't asked for prayer in the past. That's my number 1 regret, is that I believe that this channel is a community. It's a community of believers. It's a community of non-believers. It's a community of gun fans. It's a community of people that just love their family, and that's what I tried to create in this channel. And I love when people send in comments and they share what their experiences are, and I love when they send in their prayer requests, and I specifically love when they tell me later on about the miracle that God did in their life. That is truly a blessing to us. But people have reached out to me and asked for prayers, and I've never made a video on here's what I want prayer about. So I'm going to end this film. This is my number 5, is I regret not asking for prayer requests. I'm going to end this film just asking for 3 prayer requests. And these are specifically for me. If you're a praying person and you feel like praying for me, please pray for me. And if you do, what I'm going to ask is that you let me know, because it helps me if I know somebody's praying for me. So what I'm asking for is I'm asking for protection for my family. I recognize that God is sovereign and nothing slips through his hands. I recognize that without his protection, I only want to know what that's like, and I want his protection. So I'm asking that you pray for protection for my family. Number 2, I'm asking that you pray specifically for God to open up the windows of heaven and pour out such a blessing that we can't even hold it all. Not just for me, but for my school. I'm asking that you pray for my school, and that you specifically pray that God open up the windows of heaven and pour out such a blessing that we can't even hold it all. And the third thing I'm going to ask that you pray is I'm asking that you pray specifically for America to wake up and see that God is real, and he's not real happy with the way this country's going. And throughout the history of Bible stories, that's repeated time and time again, where people behave like Americans behave, where essentially they just want what they want. They're offended when you don't like what they like, and people then just scream and they protest and they indulge in their sins and they indulge in any sort of temptation that might come about. God usually only does a couple things to them, and it's usually involves destroying them. And I'm just asking, we need revival in this country, and I hesitate to even use that word because I think oftentimes the word revival, people are, they attach connotations to that. But what I mean is we just need to realize that we're not doing a very good job as a people group. And we need to recognize that God is sovereign and there's ways He wants us to behave. And we need to repent. And we need to then ask God to forgive us. And until our country does that, I just think it's going to keep going the wrong direction. But I do believe we can do that. Jesus said regarding the end times that it'll be just like in the days of Jonah. And Jonah, of course, was the guy that was eaten by a fish, and he went off to Nineveh, and they immediately repented. And I don't think it was just because this Jewish man walks up and tells them to repent, and so they did. I think the reason they did that is because they recognized what their country was doing, and they recognized what their civilization was doing. And I think we're living in a day just like that, where if we don't recognize that, we're going to be in trouble. But if we do, God will love us, and He will forgive us, and He will bless us like He always has blessed this great nation. So there you go. There's my top 5 mistakes I've made on this channel. There's a lot more than those, and I bet you anything, if you know of some others, you can comment below. There's probably 100 of them out there. But I'm human, and like I said before, if a human does it, there's always going to be errors. If you like this video, click like and subscribe. You can also now find us at godfamilyandguns.org and also on Facebook. You can also now be a patron of this channel, and our Patreon link is below. But again, by far, the most important part of this channel is the prayers. Please never hesitate to send me your prayer requests, and please pray for me. I need it. I'm always going to take that if you offer it. Thank you for watching this episode of God, Family, and Guns. And as always, love God, love your family, and love guns.